What's up guys, and welcome back. Today in this video we're going to be talking about Castle Rock episode 5 titled Harvest. So it's been 5 days since the massacre at Shawshank Prison and everyone's coming to terms with it. It's all over the news now and Henry is trying to deal with it as well. He's got like something in his ear to block the noise out after he was deafened by the shotgun and the flashbang, and he keeps having like the reoccurring noise from back in 1991, whatever he was hearing, the same thing that Nick was also talking about. Do you still hear it? So the episode starts with like a flashback to 2016, which is 2 years prior to the events of Castle Rock, where Henry's getting an MRI scan because of these noises, so they've definitely stuck with him over the years. We don't know if this is like an occurrence that just came back recently or if this has just been happening every now and again since 1991. One of the big things about this episode is definitely the visuals. Now, it's all over the news about the massacre, but it's also over the news about these wildfires that have gone all over Castle Rock and they're coming from the Black Mountains. Now, I've never read Needful Things, but I think that is like a big feature in that book about the town being burned down. So they've rebuilt the town, but now there's these wildfires, so it could happen again. But what's cool about this is this whole episode has this really cool like orange, like warm hue to it, which is very different from what we've seen because it's been very cold and blue throughout the last few episodes. So this one's very cool, and it looked almost like apocalyptic at times, which is probably a little bit of a hint of where it might be going, especially in one scene where Nick is stood on the rooftop and the whole surrounding behind him is just like orange clouds, and it kind of looks like something hellish. So that was really cool. The directing overall in this episode was really cool. There's lots of cool shots. It was just really well shot and well directed, and there was one shot which was really gross but awesome, and that was also in the beginning of the episode where Henry is called to the church, and you think it's about his dad's coffin being moved, but he's actually called there because the casket has gone through something called exploding casket syndrome, where it just turns into like a cooker inside and the body just melts, and we get this really badass shot of the corner of the coffin just on the table, and there's just this slime sludge of guts and blood just leaking out of it, which is not very nice to see when it's your own parents. So Henry's been worried about his mother and Alan, about what's actually going on in the house, if he can trust Alan with what's going on. So he set up security cameras all around the house and like sensors on the door, so when someone opens the door, a sound rings saying door open, and they've also connected that up to their cell phone so Henry can check what's going on in the house at all times. Immediately when someone walked through the door and it said door open, I just know this is going to come into play in further episodes when someone just enters the house at night when someone's asleep and it's just going to say door open, and someone's going to be scared shitless because there's just going to be someone walking around the house. So the main focus on this episode was the fact that after what's happened in Shawshank, they just want to get rid of Nick really, and Nick is let out on parole, and they show him like a parole tape about getting back into the community where he says how to get a job, where you can live and become who you want to be, which when this is a person who has no real identity and is probably obviously has some demonic fucked up things inside his head, you don't really want to be provoking these thoughts out of this guy to become whoever you want to be, because this guy could become Randall Flagg, the devil, whoever. Once again, Bill Skarsgård acting is just like perfect in this. He's so childlike and like timid, and he just does a really good job of it, even though he's like 6'3", but he's still like small and gangly. He looks like a vampire. He actually looks like someone who's been like malnourished or like neglected, and he's done a really good job of like getting into, I wouldn't say shape to this, but he's done a really good job of like losing weight for this role, because he just looks so like slender and like timid and frail. We get to see another flashback with Lacey, which is good. I'm always there for some Terry Quinn action, and he's talking about Nick in the cage and how the cage is his ark. So I'm assuming he's like this unique special animal that needs saving, but at the same time they're saying he's like the one who needs to be kept there because he's evil. So which is it? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy with just evil powers? That seems to be a big thing in Stephen King's stories. There's like a grey area. People aren't really good or bad. They just have these unique abilities that can be used for good and bad, and it's whether they make a decision to do something good or bad with them. Another cool thing in this flashback with Nick and Lacey was the way that Nick was really like obsessed. He was like engrossed with what Lacey was saying, like he was like an idol to him, like a father figure, and actually Lacey like put his hand through the cage to like stroke his face, and he kind of like put his face forward a little bit, so he like adores him even though he's treating him like an animal. But then again, he's probably the only person he's had contact with in 30 years. After Nick is released, Henry takes him to like the same place where it looks like he had his MRI scan. It could be a different place, but he goes for a similar type of scan, and he's checking out these projector images to try and like see his recognition of things. So it's saying, showing pictures of faces and different objects, and he has to say if they're a face or not. And those faces in those projector images are like the creepiest things ever. They're like some like 1960s British serial killer mugshots, I swear. During the beginning scene where Henry is being tested as well, he has to say a few phrases out loud, and I think he says something like church, family, dog. And then on the reverse, when Nick's being tested, he has to say some words also, when he says something like velvet, red, church as well. So they're kind of like opposites, so I'm not sure if they are connected. They're possibly the same sort of person. Maybe Henry does have some abilities that he just isn't using. They don't really know where to put Nick after this because he doesn't have any housing, and they actually suggest putting him in Juniper Hill, which is actually the asylum from Derry in the film and book It, where Henry Bowers is put into. So that was a cool little nod, and maybe we'll actually get to see that. So Strand decides to put Nick up in her office in the top room. There's like a little warehousey bit, and she gives him an airbed and just leaves him there to his own devices. And obviously he's not going to stay there, and it gets to nightfall and he decides to just go outside and have a wander around the streets, which was really awesome to watch, because it was just completely dead out in the streets and he was just walking around like a fish out of water. He hears this music and he goes up to like a house window and he sees some kids just celebrating the birthday, like blowing candles out on a cake and stuff. And at first I thought this might be a flashback to like him as a kid, because who has celebrations for a kid's birthday party at like midnight? Turns out it was actually a family celebration, and Nick just enters the house, just walks straight in. So I was like, oh fuck, what's going to happen here? And he's just sitting there lurking in the background, and he actually looks like Michael Myers at one point when he's hidden in the shadow and he's just watching his family, and they're cutting the cake and they put the knife down, and Nick just like notices this knife and he knows that knife's purpose straight away. It's used to kill. And he just leaves the house, goes upstairs, and he can hear it, and basically the family just ends up butchering each other. And this is obviously an effect of whatever Nick's powers are. He just, like, everyone he can come into contact with, he can just make their feelings turn to rage or hatred or illness or anything like that, which is strange because when he's with people like Henry or Molly or Lacey, he doesn't do that. So it seems like he's doing it out of choice to for people he does actually like and people he doesn't, which would make sense why if he did infiltrate Dennis's mind, why he would only do it to the guards, because the guards are the ones who've really been treating him like shit. Over on the other side of Castle Rock, we have some scenes with Ruth and Alan, and you gotta say they're quite a sweet couple considering what they've been through, and you never really know if they were like truthful or not, if Alan was just taking advantage of her. But I think he's actually legit. The way he was like talking to her and treating her and the way he was looking at her, you can tell that he's like really in love with her, which was pretty sweet to watch. He's getting ready because he has to do like it seems like it's like an obituary, or he's getting an award for something, so he has to like dress up. He's in a shirt and tie and he goes to this like outside thing where the people are having a meeting, and I think they're giving him an award, and it doesn't look like there's that many people there, so I'm not sure if the people of his generation are just dead or not that many people actually like Alan. There was one thing I noticed in this scene, was that there was two creepy guys in the background in the distance who weren't really part of the funeral, but they were just watching, and I'm pretty sure one of them, I can't be too sure, but he looked like, is it Rory Culkin or one of the Culkin brothers, the one who was in Scream 4? He looked like he was one of the actors who was just a creepy guy in the background, so I'm not sure if they're going to play into the plot of the upcoming episodes. During Pangborn's speech, he actually talks about like a magician and magical powers, and this is a theory that has been floating around on the internet for the last week or so, ever since we've seen that guy in Henry's or Nick's flashback in the basement. There's a guy with a cane, and this is actually a theory that people are saying that this guy is, I think it's Andre Lenage, which is apparently a magician type wizard character from a screenplay of Stephen King which was called The Storm of the Century. I actually started watching a bit of it, and it would make sense if that was some kind of magician wizard type of character who was trying to make these kids into like a sacrifice or something. And it's weird to see that most of the people in the crowd are wearing like those cloth masks. I think that's probably to do with the smoke from the wildfires, but it just gives this feel like no one has any emotion in that scene. It's a very like anxious, paranoid scene the way it's shot, and it's really cool because Alan's trying to give this speech of what he's probably not very confident in doing, and the camera is really close up in his face, so it gives you the sense that he's like really closed in and boxed in. And then at the same time we're seeing Henry, who's like trying to cover his ear because he can't hear anything, and he's trying to listen to what Alan's saying and what's going on with his mum. And then this huge dog is barking at Ruth, and she loses it. She has some kind of memory or flashback of maybe her dog, and she just walks off and no one notices, and then Alan sees and Henry runs to her. She's trying to commit suicide, jumping off a bridge. That shocked me. I wasn't expecting that, and I wasn't expected to jump. I was expecting Henry to come and save her, but she actually did, and Henry had to jump in and save her. This led to a pretty sad scene where they go to the hospital to see her. I don't really know what her true motive for jumping was, but she seems like she's had enough with her dementia, because throughout the last few episodes she kind of just dismisses it like it's nothing. But in this episode she pretty much admits that she knows she has dementia, and she's talking about how it's like looking at a picture book, but someone's ripped out all of the pictures and just rearranged them, which is like a good metaphor for just having just this jumbled mind. So when she saw the dog, she maybe thought of her old dog coming back to life, and it just sent her over the edge, and I thought that was a really sad but effective scene. We get a bit more screen time with Jackie Torrance in this episode as well. She goes to Strand's office because she's like an intern there or something, and she hears footsteps upstairs, and obviously she goes upstairs and she ends up lying on the airbed, and Nick just walks in naked. I'm not sure if there was anything that happened in between this scene and the next one, who knows. But the next time we see them, Nick is dressed in like a plaid shirt, so she's obviously dressed him, and they're out in a car, and she's telling him stories about the history of all these evil things that's happened in Castle Rock, which at the same time probably not a good thing to be telling this guy either, because he's going to use it for some inspiration at some point. Another thing that was really interesting was the way that when Strand went back to her office to see what Nick was up to, he'd actually dragged these shelves and mattresses and stuff, and he'd made himself a little makeshift cage, and it's like Stockholm Syndrome. It's like he's made himself at home with something he's been used to for so long, which has been horrible, but that's like his way of coping. That's his home right there. He doesn't want this nice cushion airbed. He wants a cage in the corner of a room. And finally we get confirmation about her relation to the Torrance family. She is actually the niece of Jack Torrance. She actually tells the story about how he went crazy up at this fancy ski lodge and tried to kill his wife with an axe, and we get the reason why she's called Jackie Torrance, which I'm so glad isn't her actual name. She just uses it as like a pseudonym to piss off her parents, because they wouldn't tell her the story about Jack. Her name is actually Diane Torrance. This leads to him being up on the rooftop, like I said in the early scene, where it's all apocalyptic and there's just all this really red cloud in the background, and he looks like a devil in this scene. And we get this like inner thought process of him. He's listening to all the things going on in Castle Rock, all of these people dying in car crashes, and we can't really tell if he's doing this or if this is just him listening to the people in Castle Rock. I'm probably sure he has something to do with this, and Strand picks up on this because she can hear his thoughts too. She can hear other people's pain through him, so she knows there's definitely something wrong with him. Another thing I noticed in the scene where Nick was on top of the rooftop, he was hearing people's thoughts or flashbacks, and he heard Lacey say the stain. Now I'm not sure what this stain is, if this has something to do with what's lying down in his basement. I really hope we find out what's down there soon. When Strand's telling Henry about how messed up Nick's mind is, Henry decides to let him stay at his house because his mum is in hospital. She basically has a free house, and it seems he has this kind of like shared second house out in the back of his house, and he lets Nick stay there. And when he goes in there, he finds a piano, and Nick starts playing the piano like really well, and he says, "I remember." And I'm not too sure if this is gonna come into something with Nick being related to the Divas, blood related son maybe, or maybe they looked after him as a kid or something along those lines. He could have lived there, because one of the earlier parts of the episode was focusing on if they can take him home, he might just bring his memories back, and if he comes there and he starts playing the piano, he might be reignited with what he's forgotten. And if that's where he's lived all his life, or if he's had some kind of memory in there, then yeah, it definitely shows that he has some connection to the Divas. So we come to the climax of the episode, and Alan is out there and he's getting drunk. He's obviously upset about what's happening with Ruth, and he takes his plaque off the wall that's just been put up there. So he's not too proud of his accomplishments in the town. I'm not sure if this is because he's done bad things or he's just over it. He throws the plaque in the water, and he gets a notification on his phone, which is the security app which is connected to the cameras, and he checks it and he sees Nick walking around outside the house, so he immediately goes back home. And this is where it comes to the final scene, where Nick leaves into the woods, into the gloomy woods, and this is all shot really nice and looks really cool, which I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to use that in the thumbnail for this video. Alan confronts Nick and he recognises him straight away, and this is like one of the big mysteries of the show, is that he hasn't aged a day since 1991. Alan says it. He says when he pulled over Lacey and opened the trunk, he looked the exact same then as he does now. So he's definitely not just a standard human being. This also makes sense for why he could have been at the same place as Henry, as Henry is like 39, I think he said now. Maybe Nick is 39, he just doesn't look it, so maybe they're the same age. I'm pretty sure those two are connected in more than just Lacey connected them. They were probably in the same place in 1991. And Nick says, you don't have a clue what's going on here, do you? He's definitely getting more cognitive thoughts. He can string together sentences now, and he seems like he knows what is happening. So from this point onwards, I assume we're going to see a lot more of Nick, giving us some more information about what's been going on over these 27 years. So overall, I really did enjoy the episode. It wasn't too much as far as progress, but I'm glad Nick is out of jail, and it looks like we're going to get some more story definitely in the next episode. And I really loved how they finally connected the dots with Jackie Torrance. All of these certain things, I just thought it was a really good episode overall, especially with the way it was directed. It was a beautiful episode, and it was just shot really nice and have all these different like colour hues and just perfect locations and gross scenes. So I really enjoyed episode 5, Harvest. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your theories down below. If this is your first time checking out my channel, then check out the rest of my content. There's a lot of Stephen King stuff on here and horror stuff at the moment. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my next video for episode 6 next week.